from the road. Paul Watson's coming up in the fourth hour and will be addressing an article he has written for Infowars.com that breaks down another shocking example of the mass Stockholm Syndrome sweeping not just Europe but also the United States. At an anti-racism concert in Sweden, migrants raped women in the middle of the crowd. This is in mainstream news in Sweden. In Germany, a German minister, it's now been discovered, was raped. A federal minister, and covered it up and blamed it on Germans as to not turn the population against the Muslims. Ladies and gentlemen, I was against the illegal wars in the Middle East because I thought it would stir up that population and be part of the clash of civilizations the globalists have written about, using the clash, the crisis, to destroy Western liberties and to actually put even more radical jihadists in control in the Middle East, as General Flynn and others have spoken about and exposed. But here's the bottom line to all you PC scumbags. You ally yourselves with authoritarianism, and then you go around bullying true liberals and the bastion of freedom in the West, telling us we've got to give up our language, we've got to give up our freedom, we've got to comply with every foreign alien system like Islam that absolutely enslaves women, absolutely is intolerant of other religions, and murders homosexuals. You people are intellectually bankrupt, and you're financed by the globalists. And the whole Black Lives Matter organizations, the rest of it are a joke. We've had Black Lives Matter people calling in yesterday and saying, Alex, you just don't like black people. That's a load of horse manure. You people are idiots. George Soros is a Nazi collaborator, piece of crap that brings down countries. And he's using sociology and he's using psychology to play us off against each other and take almost non-existent issues and make it the #1 red herring while he prepares with others to totally implode this country. So I suggest you wake up and get up off your fat intellectual dumbasses and start trying to save civilization. The globalists are bringing in tyranny because it'll merge with their system of tyranny, and they think Islam will work with the socialists and the social engineers to bully us into full submission. Well, guess what? It isn't working, and I'm pissed. Everybody else is getting angry, and we're never going away, we're never giving up, and we know what's going on. Now back to David Knight, live in studio.
All right, then. I'm here in the studio on this Tuesday, July 12th, 2016. I'm David Knight. Alex is going to be joining us later in the show with other special reports. Of course, he's going to be talking about Bernie Sanders, who is endorsing Hillary Clinton today. No surprise there. One thing you may be surprised about Bernie Sanders is that he's been getting $38,000 a day Secret Service protection as he's been going on this ego trip of futility that he's going on. And of course, you know, he wants free college for everybody. $38,000, that would go a long way towards paying some people's annual tuition, but Bernie is just eating that up with his security protection. Understand that one of the most broken institutions we have in this country, of course, is our institution of education, especially higher learning, as they call it. It is nothing but propaganda, selling the lies that have been created by these 60s radicals about white skin privilege and other things to foment racial division. I'm not saying that we can't talk about the differences in the way people are treated. There's a misunderstanding of that. But the way they use white skin privilege, it was a weapon. Bill Ayers stopped bombing buildings and he started brainwashing our children. That's what's behind this educational establishment. And that's why Bernie and Hillary want free college for everybody. Now, we're going to be talking about what's going on with Trump. We have some breaking news about the effort to stop Trump at the convention. The Never Trump people who said there are no committed delegates. Well, a federal judge has just said otherwise. We're going to have that and more news when we come back. Stay with us.
We've seen incredible gullibility out of the Republican Party's constituents over the years. Just look at all the lies that George W. Bush supporters put up with. But I got to tell you, Democrats take the cake, especially Bernie Sanders supporters. He came out yesterday and said that, oh, we've realized so many of our goals and we're so victorious, and now I'm throwing my support to Hillary. When Hillary is the most corporate, most crony capitalist candidate out of the entire field we've seen the last 2 years. I mean, she makes Donald Trump look like the outsider he is. And it's so sad to see Bernie supporters who are committed to getting their so-called free lunch buying into anything and everything that the Democratic Party pitches at them. It's so clear that the big money and the big media and all the big robber barons are lined up against Donald Trump. But most of the former Bernie supporters out there that are being polled are saying, hey, we're going for Hillary. It's truly shameful. Then the corporate media that sells us all these illegal wars and all these other lies is telling us Donald Trump's an evil racist and the worst person in the world, and that we all need to support Hillary because that's the best thing to do, and that it's good to go out and demonstrate and protest against the local police because they're corrupt. That's the big, out of control federal government bought and paid for by foreign interests that militarized the police to be their enforcers. Now, because they're concerned about an American-style Brexit out of the North American Union and globalism, they're trying to trigger the revolution that's brewing against local government and police. They're trying to distract the public, at the same time bring in a type of soft civil war where the UN can then be the honchos of the reorganization of the United States. Look at the riots all over the country. The police stations being shot up, the police being killed. Can you just walk up to police you don't even know the name of and randomly say you deserve to die? And some will say, well, they do that to some citizens. Statistically, police killings are flat. Even as the crime rate that's been lower for 20 years starts to go up because the economy is imploding. All Americans are starting to see, on average, their living standards go down. We're seeing our basic freedoms under attack. We are collectively, as a citizenry, under attack. And it was so exciting a few weeks ago to see the Brexit, which was a move against globalism, led by the Ron Paul / Alex Jones / Matt Drudge of Europe, Nigel Farage, to see that for days be the #1 search term, to have more search terms than all porn terms combined. There was one other search term that was also #1 for a day and in the top 5 for an entire week. That was Hillary for president. It shows the power of we, the populist peoples, the libertarians, the libertà, the true liberators, the liberals, not the controllers, not the counterfeit liberals and their Republican cohorts who are trying to shackle and control this huge awakening that's taking place. I'm going to Cleveland in just a few days. I'm going to be there for the full week of the RNC. We're also sending a crew to the DNC. And we're going to be standing up for the truth. We're going to be exposing that the Republican Party has said they're still going to try to steal the nomination from Donald Trump. We're going to be there exposing the social justice warriors and how programmed they are. And we're going to be putting airplanes in the sky that point out that Hillary should be sent to prison, not the White House. We're going to have trucks driving around town with the same thing on the side, all because you've taken action and believed in us. We believed in you, and the info war is having a giant effect. Now, I've got other reports coming up today that deal with the assault on reality, the attempt to get the average person to not be politically or culturally involved. We're going to be looking at some of the big phenomenons in AI and augmented reality, the new Pokemon Go phenomenon, and more. And David Knight's going to be breaking down with his guest, Anthony Gucciardi, and others, the latest breaking news and taking your phone calls. But make no mistake, when the entire establishment and the entire media that we know are a pack of criminal liars, discredited frauds, are telling us that Hillary Clinton's our Lord and Savior, if we really elect her, a lot of people deserve what they get. All I know is I feel like America and the whole world's reached the point of no return. It's not that Donald Trump is a perfect solution, but he's a protest against everything we've seen so far. And I hope that we can live up to what our cousins in the UK have done and send out a signal in 2016 that we too are leaving corporate world government, corporate unelected globalism that was rejected in the Brexit. That's what a Donald Trump victory would be. It's time for Americans to wake up. It's time to make America free again. And that will make this country great again. All right, back to the live transmission and David Knight. I'll be back later with an analysis on some of the new AI technologies being rolled out.
Okay, and I'm David Knight here in the studio on this Tuesday, July 12th, 2016. Alex was just talking about Brexit. And of course, there's some interesting developments going on in Britain as we see the change in Prime Minister happening, announced yesterday that it will be changed tomorrow. Now, you know, David Cameron promoted Brexit. Actually, he promoted staying in the EU. He gave them the referendum. Kind of interesting, you know, because it all came up in a pizzeria in Chicago. They were at a Pizzeria Uno, we're told. It was after an economic summit in Chicago. And I guess they were sitting there and saw the Pizzeria Uno as a sign or something. I don't know. Maybe somebody came up to him and said, hey, you want that to go? You want to take out? And they said, that's it. We'll do that because, you know, they were facing pressure from Nigel Farage and UKIP, which made getting out of the European Union one of their core issues. Why? Because of sovereignty. You know, the border issue is just one aspect of the sovereignty. They were completely shutting down and controlling the British economy. Issues like not allowing British fishermen to fish in the North Sea, or Britain to even have a say in that issue. Not to have a say in how their trade was going to be managed. You know, they were being completely dominated by these bureaucrats in Brussels. So they had the Brexit. David Cameron, however, wanted to remain in the EU. When they lost, he immediately announced that he was going to get out. He was going to let somebody else in the Conservative Party take over the leadership and manage this transition out of the EU. What we saw then was a contest. Most people believed that Boris Johnson was going to be the one to take over the leadership of the Conservative Party. He shortly took himself out, said Michael Gove is going to it was apparent that he was not going to support Boris Johnson, was going to run for it himself. Then he left. Then we were left with two women, and the news articles were, we're going to have a British prime minister that is female for the first time since Margaret Thatcher. Then suddenly yesterday, one of the females in it dropped out. Now, the interesting thing is that Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, and the lady who dropped out yesterday, they were all supportive of Brexit. They all wanted to see Britain leave the EU. The one person who was in the race, Theresa May, who is now going to be the prime minister by default. They've cut these deals in back rooms. She's now going to be the prime minister by default. She was the one person out of all these candidates up for leadership of the Conservative Party that did not support Brexit. Now, she is saying that Brexit means Brexit, and we're going to make a success of it. Nevertheless, David Cameron said, we're not going to do anything with this. We're not going to file the paperwork to get out of the treaty until September, when we have our decision to have a new leader of the Conservative Party. They very quickly and abruptly set a new leader of the Conservative Party. But now, even though that's happened very quickly, they're saying they're going to delay it another 3 months before they start the process of leaving the European Union. So now we go not from a delay of 3 months, but to a delay of 6 months before they even start the process. Even more troubling, this article that we had we talked about last night on the Nightly News. We had it on Infowars.com yesterday. Brexit vote was not binding, so Parliament must decide, said lawyers. Okay, this is about 1,000 British lawyers who have signed a letter saying that invoking Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty is not something that the Prime Minister can do on their own. The argument is that Parliament turned over their sovereignty to the European Union, and only Parliament can take it back. And then get this. They said the Brexit referendum was merely an advisory. Merely an advisory. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like what the Republican delegates who are saying never Trump are saying to us? Saying, we don't really care about all of your primaries, all of your elections. Those were merely advisories, and we're not going to really pay any attention to that. We're going to not violate our consciences, okay? We're going to violate the public trust. And we've now had an interesting case from a judge, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I don't want to leave Brexit yet. At the same time this is happening, the British people need to understand that the same issues that caused them to vote to leave the European Union are still there. And they're there in spades, okay? We have this article from the Deutsche Bank economist that said on Sunday that the EU banks need another $166 billion. Now, I don't know where they get that because the Italian